I'm not going to put you on the spot right away. So first thing, just a little bit about you, your name, obviously, what's your day job, and give me something interesting about you, like that somebody would not know. You want to go ahead, Shari?
Sure. So Shari Oswald, I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, Microsoft Office Specialist Master, and recently been invited to be the Microsoft Certified Trainer Regional Lead. So very excited about that.
Good job.
Yay. Yeah. So if you're interested in becoming a trainer, let me know. We're happy to help, but I've been involved with that community for probably about a decade, and it's fun to finally be able to make a difference in there. I'm based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, but I grew up in a rodeo town, went to high school in a rodeo town in Oregon, and my husband and I were competitive country western dancers. So if you ever want to scoot a boot when I'm around, jump on in. Let's do it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I did not know about that. Yeah, that is a good one. Perfect. All right. Mark, same question.
I don't know how I can follow that. I mean, my life is boring. No, so my name is Mark Rackley. I've been in the SharePoint space since 2007, spoken at the Minnesota Twin Cities SharePoint Saturdays, whatever they keep evolving to many times now. I live in Arkansas, so middle of nowhere, armpit of America, as I like to call it, but it's a nice little area. I have been a Microsoft MVP in the SharePoint space for 9 years now. Maybe I'll make it to 10 and get that 10-year puck if I don't screw up. So this isn't being recorded, is it? You're not gonna.
But I'll just get rid of that part. It'll be fine.
Okay. And currently I work for Avanade. Avanade is a consulting firm that is jointly owned by Accenture and Microsoft. And my role here is a solutions architect. So I'll meet with clients and I'll talk about all the things that they get within Microsoft 365, take a look at their licensing and figure out how we can create solutions for them that take advantage of all their tools, make sure they get the most out of that licensing. Even though my background is developer, I kind of go, writing code should be your last choice nowadays with all the tools that are out there to use. So that's what I do for my day job. True. Yeah. And Wes asked about my office. I'm in my new home office. I actually just recently, within the past 2 weeks, moved my home office yet again. So that's what you're seeing behind me. Nice. The fact you don't know about me, or some of you may know, may not know, but one of my hobbies, I have two hobbies that sound similar that are very different. One is foraging. So because I live in Arkansas, I live on a few acres, but there's also like hundreds of acres around me without houses. So during mushroom seasons, I'll go out and I'll forage for mushrooms and cook those up. We have morels grow here. So if you're familiar with morel mushrooms, in late March, those start growing. And those are one of the best foods in the world if you've ever had them before. And then the other hobby I have that sounds similar is forging. So I got hooked on a show years ago called Forged in Fire, where it's a knife making competition. And I owned my grandfather's anvil. So I thought, I've got the anvil, let's just get the rest of the parts. So I got a little forge. I recently got a power press, and I didn't say I was good at it, but it's a great way to relieve stress by going out and pounding on hot metal to make a knife. So
makes sense. Perfect. Well, thank you, Mark.
Sure.
And I love your new digs. They look great.
Thank you.
And Wes, thank you. I appreciate you hopping on and doing this. So a little bit about yourself. What do you do, your day job, and then something we don't know about you.
Well, for starters, I didn't think Mark was going to bring out the forging. I thought he was just going to say eating, because Mark will eat anything.
No, as long as it has bacon. No,
I want to say it's got to be bacon in it.
No, it's not true though. It's not true. I don't know.
I was thinking of the rattlesnake, Mark.
Oh.
So, okay. So one day in my yard there was a rattlesnake. It was like going across my yard, and it was actually heading towards my dogs. So I had to kill it. I didn't want to risk getting my dogs hurt. So I've got this 5-6 foot rattlesnake. And I'm like, what do I do with this? I'm like, well, on survival shows they eat them, so let's see what happens. So I skinned it and I fried it up, and it was actually it tasted just like fish. So if you're curious what rattlesnake tastes like, it tastes just like. just like fish. It's a little tougher, but exactly like fish.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
no bacon involved.
Okay.
All right. I'm local to the Twin Cities. I do independent consulting. I do some speaking and presenting and training, and I run one of the other local events, the one that Marco was talking about speaking at. Although it's all kind of, we've spoken at all of each other's events. So, yeah. So that's what I do. Mostly around M365, SharePoint, lists, and Power Apps, and that kind of stuff is kind of my area. Something people don't know about me,
But you're really into those board games. I mean, I keep on seeing that all the time.
I guess that might be a good one. Yeah, my wife and I enjoy it. We're recent empty nesters, so we're spending a lot of time playing board games when we normally would have been hanging out with the boys. But yeah, so that's one thing.
That's cool.
The one I was going to mention is I have an empty koi pond. I have a pond that I had koi in, but I don't have the critter skills that Mark has. So I have a river otter that ate all my fish. So
no.
There's the fact that most people didn't know about me.
I bet river otter probably tastes good too. You could probably fry that up. And
they are trappable. I do know.
Well, that's awesome. I'm double checking and making sure. I don't see Stephanie right now, so we're just gonna move forward with some of the questions and see if she happens to pop in a little bit later on. So, thanks again for joining us for our panel today. So, Microsoft Ignite happened a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of plethora, especially around Copilot, as Michelle led to the leading up to this. But the biggest thing I think is I want to kind of understand from your take, especially maybe going to some sessions and maybe being there. Right, there was a physical component to it. What did you feel like were some of the big announcements that happened wrapped around Ignite 2023? That's where we want to start. For you, right? So for who you are, what you do with your customers, right? What are the big things that you thought were like, wow, okay. Go ahead, Mark.
So for me, I've been involved, since March with Copilot at Avanade. We got to be very early adopters of it, got to have our hands on it, because we're really trying to figure out how we can best leverage Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and bring that value to our clients. So since that's been our focus for so long, it was good to see all of the announcements around it. I don't think it was really called. They shouldn't have called it Ignite. They should have called it Copilot. But the one that I think Copilot for Ignite, yeah. But the one that was really stood out to me is Copilot Studio, because that one of the things when we look at Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and how people are using it, everybody has data in other systems outside of Microsoft 365, and they really want to bring that data into Copilot. So I think Copilot Studio provides a great solution for being able to extend Copilot to make it more valuable to those organizations. The other thing about Copilot Studio, actually, I posted an image on Facebook. I think I'll post it in chat when I'm done talking. But it's Copilot Studio is Power Virtual Agents, right? And it's Power Virtual Agents with some additional Gen AI features and with this new feature called Copilot plugins. So there's a lot of confusion about Copilot Studio right now, and everyone's like, and I think there's a lot of education that needs to take place there too. But I think it's really exciting that this tool, Power Virtual Agents, now has a bigger stage, has more visibility, and it will give us the ability to really get those extensions into Copilot that especially a lot of clients need to really take advantage of it. Because how many people use ServiceNow? How many people use Workday? How many people have all these other systems that are not Microsoft 365? If they can't ask questions about that data, it loses a lot of its value.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I thought in general, that was the big part. It was like the expansion into being able to quickly get connected to all these different systems to really help it. I thought it was a big, big piece of what underlying all that Copilot stuff that I found. Anyways, but agreed. Shari.
My frustration continues being a productivity specialist. That it's like, where's the waffle? That's my hashtag. where's the waffle? There wasn't a whole lot. And kind of like what you said, you know, Microsoft has taken Ignite from being the big networking collaboration event that it used to be, and across all of the products, and made it their opportunity for a product showcase. So it seems like every time, you know, each new event, they focus on one thing instead of, you know, what are all the other product teams working on? And that, you know, my frustration. But a couple of things I thought were interesting was the fact that, you know, years ago they were a software only company. And people used to complain about, oh, you know, Macs are so sleek and cool. Why don't we have, you know, they couldn't control what Dell did or what all of that. They've taken that. Of course, they've come out with all the Surface line now, which are pretty. I will never go back to a laptop ever. But now they're taking it to the next level, and they're creating their own microchips to handle the data centers, and that was a little bit wow for me. You know, the fact that they're not just devices, you know, start out software, here are cool devices, now they're taking it to complete data center management. That was a kind of a big epiphany. I didn't know they were going that far. Anybody else?
Yeah, I didn't know either, for sure. That was news. Well, and I worked there, yeah. Well, and I think the biggest thing is, of course, that's wrapped up into being able to support all of the AI stuff that we're doing on the back end, right? So it's still AI driven, but in a different way, right?
I think they learned from, you know, the huge push into Teams. The growth they expected in 10 years happened in 10 months because of the environment, what was going on at the time. And they couldn't handle the truth. They ended up trying to backfill and had a lot of issues just trying to support that technology. And I think same thing, they're trying to get ahead of it this time, because I think, you know, they're kind of turning the faucet on a little bit to larger companies. Smaller companies aren't going to be able to afford or leverage Copilot in any capacity, because you have to have a minimum of 300 seats. But you know, if they're starting to kind of turn it on and hopefully, you know, get the big people in there, try it out. And hopefully later on they make it more feasible for smaller companies. Yeah.
Yeah. That last statement, I think, is a big one that I'm hearing from a lot of customers are saying that, yes. Yeah. Wes?
Well, I do want to point out, so I want to
ahead.
piggyback up, sorry, but I want to point out that, you know, using Copilot Studio, you can essentially replicate the functionality of Microsoft 365 chat, right? So if your company can't afford, you know, Microsoft 365 Copilot, you do have alternatives, Copilot Studio being one of them. I mean, you could theoretically, once you get into Azure OpenAI, I'm putting on my dev hat a little bit for a second, but you could create an Office add-in for Word that uses Gen AI in Azure OpenAI to have it generate content for you in Word. You know, so you could actually, if you really love the technology and want to do it, you could do it. I'm just saying. What's that?
The same. So the same people that aren't going to be able to afford or afford AI or afford the 300 seats, many of them aren't going to have the dev capabilities to do that stuff. So again, it's not poo-pooing what you're saying.
You're poo-pooing what I'm saying.
So here, let me back up and say what I came out of Ignite with was that we're going to have to do a lot of expectation level setting with customers. Yeah. And it's there's, you know, to what Shari said about the 300 seats, to what, you know, we've all said about how much it's going to cost, to what we all know with like the marketing fluff and how it translates into reality and how long it's going to take to get out there and be, you know, available and effective. Yes, all this stuff is super cool and going to be really effective and really, you know, up our productivity levels, but you know, who has it when and how people need to ramp up on it. And there's just a lot of stuff that has to happen that's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, some training, you know, before we see a lot of the stuff. We're going to see things quick, obviously, but I guess what I came out of the whole thing with was really just, we're going to have to do a lot of expectation settings that make sure that people understand what these efforts mean and what these products are going to bring.
Yeah, and I don't think that the lull in between when it's available is wasted. I actually think it could be better invested, because the same challenge we've had with SharePoint Search for over 20 years. I've been using SharePoint before it was even called SharePoint. Garbage in, garbage out. I've been working on multi-billion-dollar company migrations for the last year, and they don't want to clean anything out. Somebody backed up their hard drive to a server, and they're like, we're not cleaning anything, just move it all. I'm like, there are executable files in your file shares because somebody backed up their entire hard drive, including the operating system. So cleaning things out, and that was probably one of my favorite sessions of night, was the one that Matt Wade did. And his if you haven't had a chance to watch it, he has the poop emoji, the Copilot icon, and then a multicolored poop emoji on the other side of it. So basically, if you don't clean anything out, you're going to get garbage. It's that whole garbage. There you go. Who did that one?
Pete.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Pete.
That's that was the best session, because his counterpart in that, he's like, this is what Copilot does, but Matt was like, let's get real. And me, I'm all about real. So it's he drank the Kool-Aid, but he's not drunk on the Kool-Aid. He sees things in reality, and that's a great session if you missed it.
And the analogy with search is awesome, right? Because if you've been around SharePoint long enough, we saw a lot of pain when we turned SharePoint search on, and it was on all this content that people, one, didn't know was accessible, two, didn't know that permissions were set a certain way. There was a lot of pain there in the beginnings. Awesome, like super powerful tool, but there was a lot of stuff that we had to do to kind of fix that for user expectations. There's going to be another layer of that's going to happen here, I think.
Well, and I kind of feel like that's something that we've been dealing with forever, right? SharePoint was one of them. SharePoint Search. What about Delve? We had the exact same conversation about Delve.
That's what I was about to say. It's Delve all over again, right? We had companies shut off the graph. Like, it's Delve all over again. So it's get that, clean up your data, as Shari was saying, get the correct, we've had clients in the EAP who have actually limited their rollout because of the concerns with the sharing. So it's
one of my favorite conversations with a client. We were going through their documentation. I started to migrate, and I'm looking at these file names, and I'm like, really? And I stopped it. I went back. I said, have y'all cleaned this out? They're like, we need everything. I'm like, you need the potluck sign-up list from 1997 holiday party. You need that. Really? Yeah. Because they just didn't want to invest the time to clean it out.
Agreed. Well, and that takes a very long time in a lot of people's, mentality. We've saved everything since time began, right? And now we need to be able to crawl all through all of it. No, you don't, right? And that's just the mentality.
My name is Shari, and I'm a digital hoarder. Until last summer, I still had software from Office 2020 for the training manuals for Office 2020, like 22 years old. Why do I still have that? Don't have time to clean it out. Same thing.
Norm. I think that's the norm. Yeah. And Mark, thank you for piping in about your customers, because I think I was going to ask you about that. What are you seeing, especially since you guys have been very knee deep in the EAP program? I mean, besides that, what other things are they concerned about when it comes to this whole Copilot thing? Because it can't be just that.
No, I'd say that's the low hanging fruit of things that are really obvious whenever you are going to roll out Copilot, that just get that assessment done, find out what's being overshared. But the other things we're seeing a lot of, since with that 300 seat limit, like a lot of people they're not buying license for everybody in the organization. So how do you identify who in your organization actually needs a license? And some of the interesting questions that have started popping up from that is, if you start assigning licenses to some people for a role, but not other people in the same role, you're creating a level, you're giving someone an advantage that somebody else doesn't have. Because if I can now generate better content than somebody with the exact same skill set as me, it's no longer fair. So those are the types of questions that we're looking at facing too. The other is like, how are we going to roll these? How are we going to roll it out? Do we roll it out all at once? Do we do it in waves? You have to, typically you should start with those who, especially when you take into account the, I'm rambling a bit, sorry. When you start taking into account the security concerns, you probably need to start with a small group of people that that have more access, that have, it's not going to be a concern if they see something that maybe should have been secured. So that it gives you that time to make sure you lock everything down. So those are the types of things that we're looking at as we roll this out.
Okay.
And as always, training. Wes and I always beat that same drum. People, if they don't know how to use it, they're not going to be effective, and it's just going to be another waste of time. So getting people ready.
Yeah.
I think this is a good investment of time. But those of us that would want to train on it, we don't have access to it. So I can't get my hands on it to even prep to train because I don't work for a large organization. So,
yeah. Well, and I think that's in anything that has especially been recently rolled out, but it's been forever, right? Is if training doesn't go along with it, doesn't matter what you do. Example, my wife company decided to go from giving her a PC to a Mac, and they expected her to be able to know how to use a Mac without any training. And that's the hey,
It's
Don.
so intuitive though.
Yeah, it's so intuitive. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the mentality sometimes with a lot of these tools that are coming out, features that are coming out, right? I go through the message center daily, right? And look at all that plethora of stuff going out, and pretty much 90% of the time I say, make sure you notify your end users, let them know, train them, let them know. It has to happen. So
adoption. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Donald, one of the things, and maybe Michelle knows this too, since she's on the call, I'll put you both on the spot. One of the things I saw announced recently, but not any more data on, is that you are working on a SMB offering for Copilot that would be less than 300 seat requirements. But I haven't heard anything since then. Do you know anything? Any updates on that?
Michelle would be our person if that's the case.
Let's see. It's in the works. We're planning it now. We first had to take Copilot at the enterprise level to learn how much we had to scale internally and in the back end before we could narrow it back down. So that's the approach that we took. So it's definitely been very successful. We're still now, we're 1 month over being GA. So now they're starting to have the conversations about how do we get to SMB. We know how important that is. We had to prove it out first at the enterprise level. So no real announcement there, but it is in the works and it is going to be coming.
Okay. So there's some light for those who have less than 300
Yep.
licenses. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, and I've been working on this, since the beginning of the early access program, the private preview. What I can say now is we're starting to see the request for having a demo environment come to fruition internally. So because of that, we know there's a path towards and forward for SMB. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a huge ask, especially for our internal people at Microsoft to be able to demo and talk about it. But that then sets the stage for anything less than 300 easily. So that's great. I knew Michelle would have that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. So, all right. So outside, we're talking a lot of Copilot here. Obviously, that was a big piece of it, right? Anything else that you guys were like, wow, that's interesting? I mean, I know Shari was talking about Microsoft actually doing chips, right, for the data center, but still AI related. Anything else that struck you guys as far as, wow, okay, I like the way they're going. I like what's going on with this.
There were a couple of small things, like just little things that we've been asked for, like forms, creating collections and forms, being able to basically folder them so that you can organize all of your forms instead of just having a whole bunch of them if you're using them a lot. Somebody like with training, I do a lot of feedback forms and I want to see all of them for a certain client. I don't want to have them scattered and try and figure out which one was which. That was kind of helpful.
Especially, Yep.
And then they're bringing back the payment processing, which they had in the small business suite that they had for a few years, and then they killed it and they took it away. And so Power Pages is now going to include payment processing as an option. So that is going to be interesting. So looking to see what they're doing with that.
Okay, good.
And that the rest of it's out of my wheelhouse. I don't do Azure. I do a little bit of Power Platform. I don't do security. I'm a productivity person, so there wasn't a whole lot of meat.
There wasn't. Yeah. I mean, really, honestly, if you guys take a look at the book of news, a lot of that was outside of it, right? Majority of obviously was Copilot, but then it's also Azure related components too. So
Or Viva.
But I didn't feel like there was a lot of Viva compared, right?
No, not comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Viva. I think Stephanie just joined too. If you wanted to make her a.
Oh, did she?
Presenter. Yeah.
And Michelle's bringing up SharePoint Premium, but for me, that it's another paid service that I don't see my clients actually utilizing. They're, especially right now, things are tight. They're not looking to pay more for other things, but.
Well, and the thing with SharePoint Premium is it's a rebranding of Syntex, right? But it does have that component of the SharePoint Advanced Management, which I think is going to be very key for those people looking to roll out Copilot, because it's got those reports for finding oversharing and helps you really turn off, things have been overshared quickly. So there's some controls and reports there that are really critical. So if you're thinking about rolling out Copilot, it's at, same as $3 per user per month. It's not crazy expensive, but there's a lot of value there. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is the brand center for SharePoint that's coming out, with the ability to have multiple brands, custom fonts, which people have been asking for since the dawn of time, and the ability to just really take the branding to the next level. Some of the screenshots they showed for how your SharePoint pages can look in the future is just really huge steps from a branding standpoint of making it look a lot better.
Yeah.
Did you all talk about Viva Insights yet and what's coming there?
No, we were literally doing the whole Copilot thing. So hey, perfect timing, Stephanie.
Well, this is a good segue then, because what I'm super excited about, just in helping customers prepare for Copilot, there are new features where Viva Insights will give you kind of that baseline productivity. So within your admin center, you're now going to have some additional insights and information around how your organization is using M365 tools. And that's all kind of building towards that readiness conversation around Copilot. And that's just included. There's no additional uplift in cost for that. And then what's coming later in the year, Viva Insights with the Uplift license will then allow you to do all of those productivity metrics. So if you're looking to measure what's our baseline versus what productivity did we gain with Copilot, Viva Insights is going to give you that kind of information, which I know everyone is super anxious to figure out their ROI and make sure that they're getting the most out of their Copilot investment. So really interesting stuff there. Sorry for being late.
No, not a problem. And thank you, because I was getting a sense that people were like getting tired of Copilot. So thank you.
Well,
not that it's bad.
Stephanie, introduce yourself.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about you, what you do, your day job, and if you have something that like of interest, like something not most people would know about you.
Oh gosh, that's a lot of questions. Well, if they're tired of Copilot, then they don't want to know what I do now. So I'm a modern workplace architect. I work for Avanade. I'm the data applications and workflow lead for North America. And basically that means I do a lot with Copilot now. And that is why I was late. I'm in the middle of a Copilot workshop. So that's what I do. Something interesting about me, I spend a lot of time at Lake Erie. So I'm a big boater. I like to be outside in the sunshine, on the water. So this is not my time of year.
yeah, you and me both.
She's really grumpy, so be careful.
I'm super grumpy this time of year. I need some sunshine.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for and be able to join us as well. So we really just kicked off saying, what was the big announcement that you took away from Ignite? So I think that sounds like one of the big ones from you. Anything else that you were thought like, wow, okay, that's interesting that maybe somebody wouldn't know if they didn't look at it in depth?
Oh gosh, I think I heard you all talk about the things that have been on my mind, right? I've always been a big content management person, and I think the SharePoint Premium features are interesting. I know everyone's tired of the uplift cost and all of that. So I know that's a tough one, but I really think there's some really interesting stuff with SharePoint Premium that we're going to be able to do, and that'll make things easier. So I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to add to that based on what I heard you all talk about already. Those are the big ones that were on my mind.
Okay. Good. All right. So go back to the Copilot thing for a second. And I know that Mark was talking a little bit about his customers. I mean, anybody, I know, maybe, I don't know, Stephanie, you're also talking with customers about Copilot. Any things that you're finding when you're having these conversations that are like, hey, if you're going to get into Copilot, you should be really thinking about this. We did talk about getting your data in order, right? Making sure that that's right. And then, internally really thinking about, from a security side of things, start small, figure it out, work your way up. Any other things that you're seeing or hearing in these conversations?
So the one that's become more present to me is that the enterprise search conversation is starting to resurface. So now with the conversation with Copilot Studio, we're starting to talk more about extensibility. And that's always been a hot topic, is like, where can I go one place to find all the things that I need? And so we've always gone to enterprise search for that. And search, it may or may not be based in SharePoint. Hopefully it includes SharePoint content, Teams content, but it may also include data from other systems as well. And now people are saying, well, what's the future of enterprise search? And that kind of bleeds into the Copilot conversation, because now we're going to Copilot for those questions, but we're kind of waiting. And Mark, I know you have plenty to say. I don't know if you've gotten into this yet, but on the extensibility side of things, I think everyone's anxious to feel like, oh, we can go extend Copilot into all these other systems. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. So it'll be interesting to see that progression from enterprise search into Copilot and having a little more, just finally having that search experience we've all desired forever.
Yeah, I think that's going to be key, right? But we have a lot of work to do individually, right, as organizations to get to that point, but agreed. All right. Any other thoughts around the Copilot piece? Anything that you guys think to point you really have to think about with moving to Copilot?
Yes, and this actually, I'm going to tell a story about Stephanie here. I think one of the really important things that if you're looking at rolling out Copilot that you really need to do is train your users how to correctly interact with Copilot. Otherwise, you are not going to get any value out of it whatsoever. Stephanie, actually employee X, her name rhymes with Stephanie, was sending me a message on Teams saying that it was really frustrating at first because she was trying to create, it was either an email or a Word document, but it took an hour to get the prompt just right to get the experience that she wanted to out of the tool. So
in the right place too, because we have different Copilots in different places.
Right. So do you want to finish the story then?
No.
So my point being that like it is a great tool, but it's not, even though it's intuitive, it's not intuitive at all. You've got to train people to be specific with how they ask the questions and how do they word the questions to get the right responses. Another email for me is I was gone on vacation for a week. So I went into Microsoft 365 chat and I said, what important emails did I miss while I was on PTO? That was my question. And the first result was an email from 2022.
That's because you don't delete anything from your inbox, Mark. It's confused. It thinks you haven't read it yet.
But still, yeah, that's probably true too. And I probably didn't read it yet. But
garbage in, garbage out, Mark.
It was probably from me.
That's right.
Oh, for sure it was from US. Yes.
But my point being, I should have asked while I was out of the office last week, what emails did I miss? Give it the more specific context so that it's not just reaching out everywhere to give you information. And that's not as intuitive and it's not as much common sense as we think it would be.
It's the scope, right? And same thing we've always had with search. You're looking for refiners and you're looking for scope, and we have to learn to ask for that the right way, and not just say I need the thingamajig from the that meeting thing last week, whatever. They don't know thingamajig, whatchamajigger. They don't know what those are, and our search terms unless you're looking for that exact term, it's not picking up context yet. It's looking for exact. So as it learns, maybe, but I'm afraid Skynet's going live anytime now. I'm just saying, like,
go ahead.
Some of you are Terminator
Michelle.
fans.
Yeah,
So, Michelle,
I love
I
this
think
topic.
you're going to add to this. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love this topic. I have this conversation quite a bit because I explain the difference of keyword indexing versus semantic indexing. And I feel like we've gone through kind of an evolution, if you will, right? Where we had to limit the way that we would search with a keyword or a set of keywords. Now we're coming back around to talking as if we're just talking to our colleagues. And it's a different cultural change, I think, in interacting with a computer in a natural way. And so when I think and talk about the essential ingredients of a good prompt, I talk about how you need to have a goal. You need to have some sort of maybe a data source. You need context. You need tone. You need to tell the prompt what you want to get out of it. It's just as simple as saying when we communicate to our colleagues or our intern or our assistant, we don't usually just say, oh, hey, can you grab me a cup of coffee? It's usually, oh, I want this in it. I want that in it. Can you get it from here? I need it at this time. The more specific we are, is the better the result will be with the response.
Well, that's a good point, because when I first started using Copilot, I was frustrated. I didn't like the format that any of the information came back, right? I'd go into Teams chat and I ask it a question, it gives me a paragraph, and that's difficult to read. And I was talking with, because I was in the Compass programs of working with Microsoft, and he's like, well, just ask it to give you bullet points. And I was like, right, it's that easy. I just forget, because you have this, like, in your mind, you're kind of used to the limitations of Office. I mean, I've been in IT for 20 years, and it made me feel so silly that I didn't think to just ask it for bullet points. But that's kind of where we are. We're just used to the limitations of the tools we use every day, and we need to rethink the way we engage with them and ask more of it, keep asking more detailed questions. And just to give you an example, like today I'm in a workshop and everybody's had Copilot for maybe 3 months, and everybody gave an example of how they use Copilot. And most people gave like a simple response. I use it to help me find my one-on-one meetings kind of response. And the Microsoft person in the room gave this really elaborate, detailed prompt. And I'm just sitting there like, can you copy that for me? Can I see that later? Because that was amazing. We're just not, it's like this big learning curve on figuring out how complicated you can make something, and you have to like target it just right to get the things to come together. But it's incredibly powerful. I mean, just sitting and listening to that and going, I'm not even tipping, we're at the tip of the iceberg right now. There's so much more there that we're not using.
Well, just even playing with the new Microsoft Designer and trying to create an image, and how detailed you have to be, and still how imperfect it is. Have you all played with that yet? Sarah Fenna out of the UK, she's like, she created me a cartoon avatar of a woman in a shirt with an MCT, blah, blah. It was like really long, but it came up some good things. So I went in and took hers and tweaked it. And I was able to regenerate like 3 times. And they told me, there are too many people here. You mean you come back later? Apparently I was not able to ask, but interesting. Just something like that, creating an image, and how much description you had to give it in order for it to return something that was useful.
Agreed.
And then, and to that, like when you're using Copilot, I think it's really important that you can also tell it how to respond. Like respond as a marketing person, respond as a kindergarten teacher. Like you can really, and that's where a lot of power comes in, and how it's going to format that response is telling it how you want it to behave, what type of response you want. I mean, that works really well too, to really change up how you want it to respond. Like one of them, you can even be like, respond as a Shakespearean author. Like, so it's just not that it's practical usage, but you can do things like that.
Well, as a trainer, when they say you write your materials, you need to write them at a 5th grade level, which seems a little degrading to people, but it's not the fact that people are incapable of learning beyond the 5th grade level. It's just like, keep it simple. You don't get, and I've threatened to write my own courses for years because I'm like, who wrote this? And it's so bad, to be able to take that, like someone highly technical and make it something that's more conversational, that's a superpower, because we think the way we think. We don't think the way sometimes the other people think.
Agreed. So let me ask this question, flip it. What were you surprised was not announced at Ignite this year?
That's a great segue into what I was going to talk about.
But we got one in the chat that I want to bring up, but I wanted to get you guys' things first.
Okay. Well, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but so at the European SharePoint conference a couple weeks ago, during the keynote, Jeff Teeper actually made an announcement in that keynote that he did not make an Ignite. So I don't know if anybody, in case you haven't heard about it. So it's kind of it's Ignite adjacent announcement. It was just something you didn't do at Ignite, but it's called SharePoint Embedded, which is a headless repository experience for SharePoint. So it really becomes more like a document storage, really, for those customers that have those document storage needs, that needs a headless experience within SharePoint. It works well for that. And I have a link kind of handy for it to people to look into it.
We actually had somebody was asking a question about any information about SharePoint Embedded, and this is perfect. So thank you.
I don't know a ton about it yet, but I know that it's gonna help a lot of clients with those document needs that SharePoint has been lacking in for years.
Okay, perfect.
You've got my attention now, Mark. I didn't know about this.
it's anything SharePoint. Go for it.
Well, my pseudonym out on the internet is shortcut Shari, but my clients, several of them call me SharePoint Shari, because I'm like SharePoint will do that. SharePoint will do that. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. So the other one that was asked was Microsoft Places. Was thrown in the chat, and there was a big expectation that there would have been something announced during Ignite this year. If you hadn't heard about Places, think of it as that one-stop shop for your hybrid team, maybe getting together in the office. It's that piece of getting back together and understanding who's going to be in the office, who's not going to be in the office, and maybe actually meeting there, reserving a space. All that's going to be in one spot. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about it recently. It was announced last year, originally at Ignite. Nothing. Haven't heard anything. There's a blog post I put in there, and Ryan was saying that actually had a 404 air mid-November. And luckily it's back now, so I don't know what happened there. But more announcements coming from what I understand, first part of 2024. But I was actually kind of surprised there was nothing talked about it at Ignite this year on that.
No, because it was a big highlight last year, right?
It was. No, it was.
But we had a much different focus last year. People were still concerned about that hybrid, going back to the office thing. And I feel like that conversation has somewhat died out. Like if you desperately needed a solution, you've already implemented one. And now that, everybody else has kind of just suffered through figuring their way through that or just settled on just being remote for the time being. So I guess just in the conversations that I'm having with clients, I feel like it hasn't dominated conversation. And certainly we're all distracted with AI, but I don't know. It's just not been a hot topic from the circles that I run in.
Do you think Teams rooms have taken over what that audience was kind of looking for?
I don't know. I feel like that whole, I even did a Teams mesh session at 365 EduCon, and 3 people came, right? I feel like there's just this whole, the whole virtual meeting, hybrid workspace. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of conversation around it.
Yeah. Well, and along with that, did you guys catch the announcement about immersive spaces in Teams? Same thing, which I know, Accenture has been doing that for quite a while, right? I'm not sure if Avanade's been doing that a little bit, but nobody I'm talking to is saying, "Yay, let's go in immersive spaces," right?
Yeah,
Well,
it's not a hot topic, but I do think there's a lot of value in the digital twin side of things,
agreed.
but that's a whole
Yeah.
lot more complicated, right? When you're talking team smashing, it could be as simple as having an avatar and an interesting virtual space because Microsoft gives you that like out of the box. Basically, you can go in and play around and it's not complicated. It's kind of fun, but I don't know that it adds a lot to the experience. If you're going to go customize a digital twin and really get into it, I think there's a lot of great opportunity there. But I think that applies to very specific scenarios rather than just your standard meeting, you know?
Yep, I would agree.
Well, the interesting statistic is Nicole Hirschwitz, when she did her session, she's like 43% of the people still feel disconnected that are, you know, in the workplace. They're even though they've given all these opportunities to talk, communicate, be in the same room, they still feel disconnected. So that's kind of interesting.
It is
to think about.
I guess. Agreed. Yeah. Going back, any other thoughts? Any other things that you were surprised were not talked about this Ignite?
Everything in Office, I already said that. Where's the waffle?
You did. Yeah, you did. You started off saying that way.
Yeah. But I didn't see a whole lot on Power Platform either. You know, we just had the whole Power Platform conference, and I would have hoped to see some carryover from the big announcements that came out of there too.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
I think a lot of it's the Copilot and Power Platform overlap, right? Because it's going to speed up creation of apps and speed up creation of whatever on that platform. So I mean, that was some of it, but there wasn't. I think like Stephanie said, it just kind of overwhelmed a lot of those other messages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the case. I think Copilot pretty much took over everything, and it was embedded in everything, right? Yeah,
I expected to see a little bit about, you know, lists continuing to get more functionality and be a little bit more of its kind of, you know, I don't want to say exiting the SharePoint space, but kind of starting to get its own identity. And I think forms getting a little bit more pervasive. Those are things that we know are kind of like we're crawling towards, but I expected to see a little bit, maybe a little announcement that here and there about that kind of stuff, but
we've been talking about this on the AMAs for a while, and there's two things right now. They're finally starting to do the roll-up view of tasks and integrate project. I haven't had a chance to go explore what the announcements were around that yet. But you know, we're talking about it. They need the same thing for calendaring. You've got we used to have, you could do calendar overlays in SharePoint. You can't do it anymore. You know, people need to see a centralized calendar somehow and be able to curate what they need on their schedule without actually adding it to their own calendar if needed. I'd love to see some more around that, but at least they're starting to get that a little bit closer with the to-do items, tasks, and projects. Anybody?
No, I will plus one that, Shari. The calendar experience is just lacking. Definitely. Like, it's better from a homepage perspective because you have the events list now. But then there are times you click into that and you still get a classic experience. You're like, but it's jarring, the difference. And customers are always asking, well, this is it. This is all we have. I'm like, sorry, it's not any better. It's definitely a gap.
Well, it's even weird that in order to create a calendar to a SharePoint site, you have to add the web part. You can't just create a calendar. You know, you have to add the web part to the page, then it creates a calendar. It's like, who came up with that idea?
Yeah. It should be definitely the opposite for sure.
And you can customize it. You know, you can customize the classic. So still those little barnacles hanging over. You know, it's like, oh, go to modern, go to modern. It's like, oh, but it still is better in classic over here.
Yeah. Agreed.
Sorry, not sorry. I still go back to classic sometimes.
I mean, back to your question, Don, in terms of, you know, are there things that we expected or wanted to hear more about? Honestly, I think they set it up enough going in that most of us knew we were going to be just floored and run over by Copilot. Yeah. I mean, I think that was a lot of the expectation, right? We just didn't know how badly.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Wes started a drinking game, Stephanie, before we, every time you hear Copilot drinking, like, we'd all be, you're saying floored by now. If we continue.
I said the other day, if that were the case at work, I would be dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if anybody in our that are attending today have anything that you thought was big news outside of the word Copilot, because we don't want to drink right now, and or that you thought was interesting that wasn't covered. I'm curious about what the audience thinks. While they're doing that, okay, so Planner Premium, is that actually a thing? I didn't even think that was a thing.
Yeah,
there's also Teams Premium, right?
Well, there's Teams Premium, which true. I mean, but we killed that over the last 8-9 months as far as what it does at this point.
I don't think it was an Ignite announcement, but we're getting a lot more traction lately on the town hall conversation. So some of that, like the Teams town hall and Teams webinar, that's really interesting stuff coming in for, all the time we've had to spend on third-party tools to get that kind of functionality, or the team stuff has kind of been slow to come around in terms of having those big meetings. So I'm interested to see how that does. We do have customers that are switching to that now.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing that they're starting to do it, but they're still leery, right? I think a lot of customers are going to be leery until it proves itself, just like anything new, right? So Pete, thanks for that. Yes, Planner Premium is replacing Project. Oh boy. Anybody gonna look at that?
They're just renaming everything. They didn't do anything. They did all Copilot new, and then they renamed everything else to make it look like they did a bunch of stuff.
And don't forget the new icons. They're all
yes.
gradient,
flashy new stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the other challenge that's coming with all these renamings and premiums and things like that is that we're kind of getting picked left and right on licensing, and that's something it's a new. I hate saying the word paradigm shift, right? But it's that concept, right, where there was a shift from on-prem to cloud and having to justify and understand the licensing and the costs and budgeting, and we had that kind of solid for a few years, and kind of hitting us all at once is all this new licensing that's either, they haven't raised the prices on the standard kind of licensing things as much as they've said, all right, but that's kind of where our functionality is stopping. And now if you want new stuff, you're going to have to go boom, 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 and boom, boom, boom. And that stuff.
It's a mindset though. It's a mindset. Nobody they pay for their E3 and they don't want to pay for anything else. Here's my problem with that. Those same organizations who complain about having to upgrade and buy additional licensing are the same ones that allow 5 different project management tools throughout their organization. If you just standardize, pick a tool, make everyone use it. I know that's not ideal, and I know there's political stuff behind that, but the same ones that won't upgrade waste all this money on disparate third-party tools where they could funnel it into one. That's just something that I consistently see that just makes me laugh, because I was like, you're spending all this money over here, but you won't take advantage of what's available under the Microsoft umbrella. And by the way, now that you have Copilot, all of that information that's going to be in 365 is now going to be available to Copilot. So if you're spending money and you need to find money for those uplifts, go take a look around the organization and go find out how many third-party tools you're spending money on. I guarantee you find some money for some additional licensing.
Well, not just additional licensing. Sorry to cut you off, Shari. Okay, so quickly, not just additional licensing, but I love the new Viva CNC licensing. So this is where you get the premium Viva Connections, premium Viva Engage, and Viva Amplify for $2 a user a month. And that's really cheap compared to other corporate communications tools out there. So if you're using some other third-party tool for your corporate communications that's probably costing you more than $2 a user a month, you could switch that to the CNC, and that's going to free up more money for other things as well. So don't just look at project management, look at the other tools that are out there and what licensing deals you can get with Microsoft.
So I worked for a nonprofit here, and they feed children internationally. And when we did an inventory, I worked for the director of architecture, and we did an inventory of all the tools that people were using around the organization, because they kind of went from small and they grew really fast, and they were plugging holes in the boat as they were going. They had 8 different Power BI tools that they're paying enterprise licensing for, including some that required their own server to be dedicated to that software. And, you can feed children, or you can have all the shiny Power BI tools. And to your point, it's like, what are you trying to do here? Everything's a trade-off of time or money. And if it saves people time, pay the money. And especially as people are, their organizations are getting more and more lean, you're asking people to do more and more stuff, give them the tools they need to be more productive instead of having to do things the hard way.
Well, and then you can train them, right? There's the comment
Yes.
is in the chat that they're trying to find the perfect tool. And it's because we throw technology at people problems. We just keep, we'll try a new tool. We'll try another one. We'll try this one. Instead of actually you standardize, you can create standardized training, and then everybody can help each other rather than just everybody being in their own silo. We have so many silos in large organizations where you're not moving towards the same thing at the same time. And I think there's so much lost when you're not funneling all that to the center.
You're definitely speaking my language right now. The people side of change.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So thanks on the planner stuff, guys, and understanding how that's working with the planner premium. Any other pieces up there from the attendee that you guys were like, well, I can't believe that they did not talk about this, or where is that?
I had to search for the content in Planner. They don't have it highlighted in the table of contents very well. It's under 4 apps and services, section 4. But
okay, so section 4.1.5, I think I see it. Yes.
And some new ones for the. I'm not a Loop person because I don't work in a large organization, so I can't leverage or skill up on this, but there's a bunch of stuff around Loop. Do you all have some insight on what's happening with that?
I haven't heard anything about Loop.
I can't even get the new teams to work on my phone as a guest user using my personal account now that they created the Microsoft community tenant thingy. So it doesn't let me switch orgs. It goes to the community and organizations that I'm in as a guest. I can't even get into those. So Loop is a whole nother thing when you're,
Exactly. Michelle, I see you came off mute.
Yes, I did. Loop is now has gone from preview to GA, and there's also integration with Copilot inside of the Loop workspaces. So I think Don, let's put a pin in this one, and maybe we come back in January and do a whole Loop. What is it? Because there's several pieces to it. There's components, there's pages, and there's workspaces, and then there's Copilot integration.
I have to say, I was someone who originally was like, we literally don't need one more project management tool of any kind. But Loop is growing on me and I see the way that it's being integrated now too with Teams meetings. You go to notes, everybody's collaborating on the same agenda and notes at the same time during the Teams calls. And I'm starting to use it more now in my Teams messaging. So and then knowing I can use Copilot on that as well to help generate ideas and things like that. It's growing on me. I'm getting there, and I actually tend to gravitate more towards that than OneNote, depending on the use case and who I'm collaborating with. So I'm coming around on that topic.
Yeah, outside of that, not much more. But then somebody was asking about what was the big deal about any of the Surface devices that were out there. Outside of Surface Hub 3 was launched here in December. I think there was a little bit about that. Outside of that, there wasn't really a lot around the Surface devices.
I mean, they just had a change in their personnel there. I mean, like
they did.
The head just left, and so I think I suspect that may have tweaked the messaging, because I think wasn't that like literally the week before Ignite when he announced he was leaving.
Yep. Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully they're going to continue with the Surface line, because I think it's been an excellent set of hardware that lots of people have loved. But yeah, who knows? We'll have to kind of wait and see at this point.
Yeah.
I still miss my Windows Phone. Just saying.
You're the one.
That's a drinking game. You should do that.
I loved my Windows Phone. The last time it was on my screen, I was a fan. I was really sad, honestly. I really didn't want to give up my Windows Phone when I had.
Obviously, this is a hugely biased group, but I mean, for those of us that had them, there are raving fans, and
yeah, I would agree.
I still have it.
Oh my gosh!
I've still got 2 or 3 of them.
I pet it every once in a while. It's in my drawer here.
Do you turn it on just to see what the heck happens?
Yeah.
It's that and InfoPath. All right. We'll leave that there. I know.
So
have to throw that in there.
Another one I thought was an interesting acquisition that they didn't really talk about, but they're incorporating is the Ally.io. Did anybody ever use that before? And now it seems to be part of Engage. The objectives, I'm sorry, goals. It's Viva Goals.
Yes. That's where it went. Yes.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't think I used it prior to it being acquired and have much knowledge on that.
All right.
Wonder if Michelle would pop up and say anything about it.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, Ally.io was purchased, I think it's probably a year and a half ago now. And it's now become Viva Goals. It's a part of our Viva suite. And is there any specific questions that you might have, Shari?
No, I was just trying to figure out how it works. It almost looks like project management included with goals. I don't know. I'm going to have to go play with it now. But
so
that one kind of snuck in under the radar for me anyway. But there's so much out there. That's not surprising.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a brief project with Viva Goals, and it was really interesting from an alignment perspective how fast you realize that things coming top down and how long it takes to kind of get communicated down to the rest of the organization and the misalignment in there. I think Viva Goals is actually really powerful, but it's something that we don't see a lot of organizations adopting yet. There's so many things within the stack now. I feel like some of these get lost, but I really like the tool itself and I would say it wasn't a great experience on the project I was on, but it called to focus all of the issues that were out of alignment very quickly, which was really interesting.
Interesting. I just going through the book of news. Those were the ones that are jumping out at me.
Yeah, I mean, that's agreed. There was a couple of things I saw too around that. All right.
That I defer to the masters on.
And it looks like Nick Stillings went in their goals is the OKR piece tool in the Viva Suite for aligning for strategy and work. So it's not necessarily project management, but higher up, right? And really trying to figure that and get that information out. So, all right.
So while we're talking about things, something that because my brain is random and jumps around, going back to the immersive spaces for a minute, where it's like you're having a hard time finding value in that for the average organization. One of the things that I really do like about immersive spaces, and this goes back to the AltSpace VR days, is that when you're in one of these immersive meetings, that you can actually walk away from the crowd with another person and you can talk and nobody else can hear you talking. So it allows you have this ability in these immersive spaces to have real one-on-one conversations with people without, interrupting anybody else, which I think is actually, if you think about that, that's really a powerful thing to do in that type of scenario.
Yeah, I would agree. I like that. And I also like the fact that in an immersive space, especially if maybe in general, in real life, you have a hard time interacting with people, it helps make that that interaction even more powerful for those types of personalities that just can't handle that.
Yeah.
But I do like that capability of like being able to have a meeting in a meeting, so to speak, right? And be able to just walk off and have those conversations and meet over there, but yet do it virtually.
Well, and the other story I tell about that during, I guess it was the first Ignite, virtual Ignite, when Satya did his keynote in AltSpace VR.
Mm-hmm.
I joined that virtually with John White, who lives in Canada, for those who don't know John White. And we were actually standing next to each other in AltSpace VR watching the keynote. And Satya made some fairly big announcement. But after he said that, both John and I turned to look at each other. It was just avatars, but still we were able to, like, kind of like turn and look at somebody and get a reaction from somebody that you're standing next to virtually. It was kind of a little bit surreal to experience it quite like that. So it's a little more immersive than you would think about. It's just the ways you can react with people.
Was his avatar way bigger than yours?
I don't think they have a height requirement in immersive spaces yet, but
Thanks, Wes.
So I feel like you kind of have to choose then. If you're in an immersive space, you have this more real scenario. But then I guess when I go back to thinking about meetings now, I'm a little bit dependent on Copilot now. So being somewhat neurodiverse and easily distracted, I'm heavily dependent on Copilot to go ask it questions as to what did I miss if I lost focus for a second. I feel like the two of those probably don't mix, right?
They do.
Like you're not going to have
because now you can have
can you have a full
conversation.
transcript?
Sure, why not? We don't know yet, but I'm sure that's kind of like. I'm just saying, like, theoretically, yeah. I mean, theoretically, that's perfect because now I don't.
Theoretically,
I can have
doesn't
that
catch
one-on-one.
everyone's conversations, though.
But no, you wouldn't want it. Well, I mean, you wouldn't want it to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? You wouldn't want it to necessarily.
Stop finding holes in the technology. Let's figure out
pros and cons.
Yeah,
that's all.
That's a good point. That's a good point. No, that's a great point. Transcripts and the one-on-one conversations. Earn you. Stop thinking.
That's it. Yeah, that's her job. All right. So
yeah, her job is to poke holes in every idea I have. It's been that way for years.
I don't get to do it as often now that we don't work side by side. So I know you miss
there
it.
You go. There you go.
I was starting to actually like take pride in myself.
All right. So it sounds like, I mean, there's a lot of things that we've covered so far. So one question I have for you guys right now is, give me one thing that you think is a good takeaway from what happened at Ignite for our attendees here today. I know there's a lot, but what's one big thing that you think they should really know?
When I said mine already, Copilot Studio is Power Virtual Agents with Gen AI capabilities. And it's a very low-hanging fruit, easy way to get started in Gen AI as well. And you can use Copilot Studio in Teams, which is included in your Microsoft 365 licensing. So you can start playing with it without having to have any premium licensing whatsoever. So I would go take a look at that, go into Teams and start playing with it. But when you search for it in Teams in the ellipsis, it may still be called Power Virtual Agents still.
Yeah.
But go do that, get familiar with the technology, because that's where a lot of stuff is going to be going.
Clean out your stuff. Clean out your stuff. Clean out your stuff. Clean out your stuff. That's the big one for me. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, even if you don't have Copilot now, if you want it later, now's the time. Go do the groundwork. Get it done. Your search will be better anyway, right? I feel like we've been preaching the data governance thing for years and years and years. We finally have a reason to go do it. Go do it now. I agree.
I use retention policies in my Outlook folders. So I have rules from Outlook folders, and if you forget about it after a while anyway, it's not there. So I wish they had this same kind of thing. I know they do in SharePoint. You can create retention policies, but just for in general, like that sign up list for the potluck, after 3 months or a month, get rid of stuff like that. There's, but people have to think about what they're storing and where they're storing it, and not necessarily helpful, but just start with your Outlook. Get rid of those old emails. You don't need them, I promise.
But it's
Mark?
But we still have the
Mark.
generations that are kind of in power right now that we've all got our boxes of cables, right? it's a people problem. And
I
it's,
feel really attacked right now with the
No.
cables and the emails both. So just like,
it's not just you. I've got many boxes upstairs. Anyways, but
don't
I
you
mean,
touch my
that's
junk drawer. My junk drawer stays, okay?
but it's, I mean, it gets to the people that are making decisions right now are those of us that still keep stuff around because just in case. And it's going to take some culture change to get through some of that cleanup stuff. I think we all agree it needs to happen, right? I mean, we need to clean stuff up, and it's just going to be better going forward. But there's just a mental shift there, I think, that is challenging for a lot of us. I kind of typed up like what I thought the big thing was coming out of there, which is kind of, we kind of need to reset the way that we're thinking about doing stuff. I was talking about personal productivity, but I think there's a bunch of different topics where I think we've been doing things a certain way for a long time. And when I say a long time, I'm thinking 10, 15 years, right? I mean, that's kind of how long we've been doing SharePoint-y stuff. But where we kind of need to step back and go, all right, if this is what I'm trying to do, what are the new tools I need to be looking at? What are the new ways, with Copilot and prompts, and just of kind of hitting reset a little bit. So each org is going to have their own way of doing it, but I think there's probably more of a need for individual resets than we've probably had in a while. So that was kind of the big thing I took out of it. I think mostly not to be doing buzzwords, but prompted by Copilot, right? I mean, it's going to hit a lot of stuff, and we need to be ready for it, even if our orgs aren't going to have it right on day one.
Well, and I think it's important to remember too, enterprise Bing Chat, or it's just called Copilot now, which I find to be confusing, but that's included in E3. So you don't need to have that big, fancy, expensive license to start playing around with AI and understanding how to use it. Your organization should absolutely be configuring it, because otherwise you could be losing intellectual property to ChatGPT or Bing Chat. Yes, you can, select some boxes and protect your data, but are people, in the loop enough, educated enough to know to go do that? Maybe not. So I think regardless, you have to be educating people on AI, on the proper use of it, what you have available. Like if you do have the enterprise Bing Chat, teach them how to use it. It is a productivity tool. It's amazing. And there's so much more coming. I think Copilot's okay today. I think it could be really incredible in another year or two. So I think we all need to start shifting our mindset and, thinking about how to work differently and being more productive with the tools that we do have today.
Yep. Yeah, and start working on your prompts, making sure you can do it the right way right away.
I think one thing I've been seeing from a lot of organizations I've been talking to is, for crying out loud, give the people that are managing your systems more help, so that they can spend less time. They still have to be keeping the lights on and keeping the systems running, but these folks in all the organizations that I've seen and talked to are so overtaxed that they have no time to learn all this stuff they have to learn before it gets turned on by default. And orgs are going to get hurt by that one way or another. The folks that are the admins that we've been taking for granted for years need to have time to ramp up, and we have to explicitly give them time, because they are overtaxed and overfull on their time on just keeping stuff on right now. That's another mindset that needs to change in management, but it's overdue.
Well, and on top of that, I think when people look at Copilot, organizations are thinking they're going to get more output from their employees. And I don't think we should look at it that way. The employees are already overworked. Look at it as a tool that helps them not be so overworked.
Yes.
So that's having that mindset in place too, I think, is really important.
Yep.
Well, and as long as the Copilot tools are also helping IT, right? Because we have a bunch of those that are coming out that are going to be helping IT to be able to make those decisions and do it quicker, right, than before. But they still, right, let IT use the tools.
Yeah.
They're going to be the ones that have to support it.
The Copilot, what's it called? Copilot for GitHub or Copilot for devs? I don't know what it is. That's the most. That's really the most.
Copilot.
That one's the most mature of all of them, and it's been a huge game changer for people.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Any closing thoughts panel for today?
Copilot.
I would say it's not all
Drink.
Copilot. You don't have to have Copilot. You can look at the Gen AI capabilities that are out there. You don't have to wait for Copilot to get started with Gen AI stuff today. So play around with it.
Agreed.
Copilot.
Drink again. All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys being able to jump on today. Wes, thanks for being flexible and jumping on and giving us your opinion. Thanks, everybody. And a round of applause for them, everybody, if you get a chance to say thank you. And we will continue on with the rest of our presentation. So thanks, guys.